Hi, this is Roger, and this will be part 2 of what was my Sunday watering session. Far too much to go in one video, so this will be like the second part. Hope you enjoy it, me chatting away, looking at plants as I water them, watering them, and I'll edit out the bits where I put them back on the shelves because that's not really the interesting bit. Hope you enjoy this sort of thing. Say so, and if you don't, say so, and let's get going. Okay, that's everything over that side done. Get these biggies back where they go now. I'm having to move the Cymbidium back to front because getting at other plants is starting to lean against that spike with my leg. So by putting it around the back of the plant rather than around the front, it won't change the aspect of the buds, which is important. Right, this lot next mounts out of the way so that we don't lean against the spikes or break any shoots off. There's not much to do over here, but what I am going to have to do is that bulbophyllum, and boy does that take some water. A lot of moss in there, and it should stay moist anyway, so how are we doing now? It hasn't totally dried out. The moss around the outside is still wet, but the bark in the middle isn't. So we'll chuck some through the middle of the pot. This is Wilbur Chan, and actually, strictly speaking, it's not Wilbur Chan. It's Wilbur Chan, Will You Get On and Bloom in brackets. It still isn't showing any signs of doing that. Certainly big enough. Oh well, I can only hope. Give it time. Maybe the light, as it gets better and the days get longer, will kick it into action. This is a very sorry looking Phalaenopsis type. No ID. It's capable of blooming, but it's showing no signs of doing that yet. And that's still damp down the bottom of the pot. It's not growing at the moment, and it's not spiking, so it doesn't need any help. It can just stay a little bit drier. This one, however, does have a spike, and it's not actively growing as a plant though. The 3 growths from last year are this one. That's the one that bloomed, and that one didn't, but it was last season's growth. This was the season before. So we are going to get some blooms, but as a Phalaenopsis type, that's a pretty pathetic bloom, 4 buds. So it's still not growing well, but it's not actively growing, but it is dry, and it is trying to produce some flowers. So all 3 of my Phalaenopsis types are due a repot. And the reason they went downhill is last time they didn't get the repot when they should have done, so I won't miss my chance this time. One more, then got the 3. This one started growing a bit better, suffered a little bit in the heat, even though they don't mind being warm, they like the humidity as well. Again, this one's going to produce a very poor quality spike, probably just 2. That one's white when it comes out. The other one with the spike is Thai Angel. It's actually got a name. This is just a no ID. That's just getting a trickle. It's not getting much. It's not actively growing, but it is trying to produce some buds. So, those 3. They don't come out to play very often because they're not doing much really, but 2 of them are going to be in bloom soon. That one's certainly showing the pink on the lovely blooms on that one when it comes out, Thai Angel. It also doesn't like standing up. But this one, although it's not growing very well, it serves an important purpose because it leans against the tall lanky one and stops it falling over. Everything has to have a purpose. Bulbophyllum, I doubt if you've finished dripping yet, have you? Oh yeah, jolly good. Let me go back there. That got raised up off the floor to try and get some more heat. I have to fiddle with the leaves. Right. Couple on the floor here. Nellie Isla. Tempted to spike several times on this latest growth, which is just starting to produce some roots. but the spikes had to come off. I need this plant to get going. Virtually rootless except for these few new ones starting, so it just needs keeping moist around the base of the new growth. Again, that pot's far too big, but it's done now. To disturb it wouldn't do it any good at all. What are you doing? Nothing, I expect. Yep, as expected, nothing. This is Dendrobium delicatum, which is apparently a naturally occurring hybrid. The video I did of the Wessex Orchid Society had a nice one of these in blooms. Large, if you look at the shape of the canes, a much bigger plant with nice spikes of white blooms. And the fragrance from that plant was filling the room, which is what I want this to do, but it's not going to do it for a bit yet. It's not going to bloom on those canes, so all I can do is wait for that to start growing, which it isn't doing now, therefore it doesn't need any water. Drier in winter. Now, what's the monster up to? This needs repotting too. This one shouldn't dry out, this one should stay constantly moist or it loses its roots, and without its roots it gets crinkly leaves because it doesn't hydrate. But it has pushed up several new growths, one of which bloomed a while ago. It has got a reasonable root system now. And all that's going to get is a tiny little bit round where those new roots are, because the bottom of this is still quite wet. What's happening with this is the media is getting old because it stays wet most of the time. So it's starting to hold its moisture a lot longer than it used to. So it needs coming out of that pot and going in some fresh stuff. That'll be a big kitchen session, won't it? A plant that size. These all go down on the floor because they're all cool growers. And soon they'll have to move away from the glass, or at least the coleogeny will, because it'll be too bright for it. The delicatum will be fine. Alright, you can now get out of the way for a minute or two. Lean over there and get in the way somewhere else. Right. Actually, I can go on the floor. We've got sunshine today. So I'm just clearing up some debris. And as we're starting on a new shelf, we'll start with some new water. You can see there aren't that many pots get done with each batch of water. So although I'm sharing water, it's not too much of a big deal. There are certain plants that get their own water because I know they had fusarium. They may not have it now, but they may have. You know, why take a risk? In full bloom, but not for much longer. That's Spring Dreamer pollen. Well, that's dry. So that needs a good soak. Not producing any growths from the base yet. Nonetheless, it's got to support its blooms, which are coming off soon. For a plant that size, that's too many blooms. I don't want that to stall, basically. Right, what about you? Actually, you're quite dry. You can have a... This one gets treated a little bit differently, because what I do is the holes in the bottom of this tray, Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii, are a bit small, so the water doesn't escape very quickly and it seems to puddle. So what I do is I give it a good soak and then just hold my hand over the top and tip it and get the water out so it doesn't stay soaking wet in the base. That's that little one done. There's a little bloom on that. Ugh, my most fragile plant. So I don't see huge signs of new growths. I do have two new growths on this. I've shown this recently. So it's Odontoglossum crispum, or it was once, still is in here. But because of where those new growths are, this has got to be watered incredibly carefully. If I get water in those new growths, it's not going to do them any good at all. So basically I just gently tip the water, very gently, so that it doesn't touch those new growths and just gets on the media. Really do not want to lose this. I'd have a hell of a job to replace it if I did. But it hasn't long been put in new media with some moss, so it does dry. And those two new growths are living off of that bulb at the moment. They haven't got their own roots. So it's hanging in there, I think is the expression. What's this thing doing? I never have any luck with these. This is Dendrobium Stardust Firebird. Actually, it's Stardust Firebird with some buds. So we will have some buds, blooms to come. And if it's producing buds, it needs some water, or it will drain the cane. That's a weak plant, you know. It should be a lot bigger than that. But I started that plant again. What are you doing? Oh God! This is Comet King, and again, it's a kiki. I was given this, and it grew that. And both that and that are attempting to bloom. And I'm just going to knock those buds off. In fact, I'll do it now. I can't let this bloom. I need growth. I'm sure you're all throwing your hands up in horror. But if I let them get bigger, you know, then they'll trigger the plant to tell it it's blooming. Whereas now it thinks I'm not blooming. So it'll either try and put some more buds out or start growing from the base, which is what I want. But it's not actively growing at the moment, so it's only going to get the tiniest amount of water. And wait till I see those new growths. That's a nobly type, Comet King. Right, what we got up in here then? This is one of the other recent Cattleyas that Beatrix sent me. And again, the media it's in looks good, although there's some huge gaps in there. But it's a Cattleya, those gaps don't matter that much. It's just a matter of making sure it doesn't stay too dry for too long. I might mount that one, get round to it and look into it. Its latest growth has no sheath, and that growth was on it when I got it. It's not mine, so I'm just going to make the sheaths off so I can see the dogs see the rabbit, as they say. But it's got a reasonable root system in there with some active growing tips. I'm quite happy with the plant, but I don't think it's going to bloom on its latest growth. It's a Laelia tenebrosa aurea. We'll see what happens with that. Nice blooms on that if we ever get any. This is my other Infundibulum cross, and this is crossed with Lowii. This has bloomed on previous new growths. It was in bloom when I got it. This is its only new growth at the moment, still pushing out a leaf, so it hasn't finished growing yet. So there's something dark lurking in there. Oh, it's alright, it's just the next leaf coming up. And I want to repot this. It's never been repotted since I got it, but there are still no new roots at the base of that new growth. And I know the guy I got it from, Alan, he pots a lot of his stuff in bark, grit and stones, so I know it's in a very light, airy mix. So the fact that it's been in there a while is not the end of the world. And that's it up on that shelf. And again, putting them back is not good video stuff, it's picking them up, watering them and talking about them. Right, some more that don't come out to play very often now. Mainly because they're not doing anything, but nonetheless, they don't get looked at very often. They're both similar. Similar in as much is that on the surface they appear to be the same hybrid, but in fact they are both primary crosses. The other one's the other way round. So this is Farmeri crossed with Griffithianum, and the other one is Griffithianum crossed with Farmeri. And although you may think that makes no difference at all, it does. The blooms are totally different colours. So this one is a drier in winter. Nonetheless, it's in such large bark, it gets totally dry in between watering. It's not growing at the moment, but nonetheless I don't want the canes starting to desiccate. This one had a lot of bug damage on it a long time ago, but it holds its leaves for some considerable time. These are the new leaves, they're fine. So whatever that was has long since gone, but nonetheless I'm stuck with those leaves. But we've got some new leaves here, here, here and here, and eventually these older ones will either fall off or get some help. And then this is the cross the other way round. This hasn't long been repotted. It's still slightly damp in there. This is a smaller version. It's actually got a name. It's Memoria Christa Erdmann, but it's effectively that primary cross in reverse. It's pushed up quite a few new growths. Highly expect that to bloom, but no water for you. And the only other couple on this shelf, which you hardly ever see because of where they are, this is Miltonia flavescens, a species. And this has never bloomed, but it does have a lot of new growths maturing. They're not the same size as the ones that were on it when I got it. So they're smaller new growths. It doesn't mean to say they won't bloom, but this little thing is totally pot bound. I think it's eaten the media, so it does dry out. That one gets a good soak when it gets watered. Do with some blooms on you soon. And then the other one on this shelf, which we had a look at a while back for Martin, is the Encyclia Cordillera. That's still got plenty of water in that pot, so you can just go straight back again. You're probably wondering why I'm not picking the holy clay pots up. They have their own schedule. They're not on this run. They were only done 3 days ago, so they're not due. That's why I'm just bypassing them. As I said, I do my plants in sets, and if I start muddling the sets up, things will get missed, things will possibly get done too often, although probably not this time of year. So I am very careful to keep them in their sets. And that way nothing gets missed out. It's a routine. Routines are much easier to handle than random. Much easier. Random leads to mistakes. Right, so that's that lot. These two Hercoglossum kikis are staying out here because where they don't get as much light as I would like them to get. So they're going to stay up here where they get the light. You need to just go out of the way for a minute and get onto the pots. Recently potted, dry as a bone. Recently repotted stuff that will be dry totally because of the length of time gets absolutely soaked. No messing about, that's drowned. In 2 days' time it will be starting to dry off quite dramatically. Spike's pushing on that thing. Sarco Chilus. Sarco thing. But at least we've got a spike, so let's see what it's going to look like. Strange thing. We had a look at that not long ago. That's dry. That missed last time round. I know it did. It was borderline last time, so better give it some this time. It does have some new roots and new growth after all. Purple tinge around the edge of this new growth, so it needs to come slightly away from the light before it gets too bad. And this little bulbophyllum that's got a tag that says Tingaborinum, and the tag's actually wrong, so I don't actually know what that's light. Not too much that it's actually burning, but it's higher than it needs. Got the purple tinges on all 4 new growths there, so that needs to come back a bit. That's highly likely to bloom on those 4 new growths. It bloomed on the previous 2. I don't see why it shouldn't on the latest 4. But, oh, you poor little thing. I'm not sure that's going to make it. That's a Latoria type, Nora Tokunaga crossed with Aberrans. It's not growing from the base, top leaves aren't happy, and it hasn't got many of them. And it is reasonably dry, not bone dry. We'll put some around the edge just to give it a little drink. Not much more than a handful out of the fountain. This little dendrobium's growing on, nice new growth on this. Came out of the big box. It's Jarak Firethorn Brownie. Of course it is. I'm just growing this on out of interest, quite honestly. I doubt if that's blooming size by any means, but it's pushed up a nice new growth. It's growing. What more can you do? Now I've got seedlings here, and the pots are absolutely full of dead flipping blooms off of that twinkle. I don't want to leave them in there. You know, I mean, they'll just break down. You know, that would happen naturally in the wild, but it could cause some problems, so we won't bother. Now the 3 seedlings that are in the light are still not showing signs of growth, and nor are the ones that aren't under the lights. There's no reason why they shouldn't be. This is a continuous grower. I can't even read. I've got to re-ask what those little seedlings are because I can't read the label. Alan's writing is atrocious. It's a moniliform variegata crossed with, looks like Raitan. R-A-I-T-A squiggle. Goodness sake, right clearly. But I suppose, you know, it's a, you probably wouldn't attempt to sell them at that size, so they probably wouldn't get sold until their next repot, when he might rewrite the labels a bit clearer. You could get a job as a doctor with writing like that. That one hasn't even got a label. But because these are under the lights, in theory they will dry a bit quicker, so they do get watered. The other 3 may not get any water this time round. What else we got up here then going on? These are my Harveyanum kikis. This is the saviour of that. That's the plant that had the stumpy roots in the glass that I just dumped in the water. I was going to say earlier, but the chances are that'll be in a different video. But this is the saving grace. I haven't lost Dendrobium Harveyanum, but boy have I set it back having to resort to kikis. But nonetheless, I still own the plant. What are you doing? This is supposedly a nobly type that just would not grow for me. So I took some kikis off and just kept the kikis. And, from the base of this plant are now some nice strong new roots growing, and it's got a stumpy thing sticking out the side. But when I had the mother plant, it would only grow kikis. It never ever grew from the base. So that may well be a kiki. If it's a bloom, it'll be the first time in about 4 years. And I'm not a patient person, but there are some plants, it's not that I'm being patient with them, it's just that they're not in the way. You know, they're not taking up special space, they're just sitting somewhere out of the way, and I can cope with that. This is my Dendrobium rhodostictum. That's for Lynn. We were discussing a hybrid at the Wessex Orchid Society. Aberrans crossed with rhodostictum, and I said the chances are that cross is not named right, because if it's got rhodostictum in it, the bloom should be a lot larger. So that's the size of rhodostictum blooms. Gorgeous. Woohoo! Never be without that one, that's for sure. We had a little accident with that one. She knocked it over, fell on the floor, fell out of its pot. Well, it didn't fall out of its pot, but all the top media came out, leaving all the roots exposed, which is why it looks like it's got nice shiny new bark around the top, because it actually has. When that fell on the floor and landed sideways down, as I picked it up I was almost in tears, because I thought there's no way that hasn't broken those spikes. You know, it's quite a height to fall from, and no damage at all, apart from losing some media. That's the other spring-dreamer pollen. Again, waiting for new growths out of the top. Right, we've only got the zygos to do now, so I won't film putting this lot back as it's fiddly. I've got to rearrange some things as well, but I'll be back shortly. Okay, last few now. Awkward ones as well, and large pots, so I know I'm going to need a fair bit of water. This is the zygos. Now, can you see a problem here? large spike hanging out. How am I going to get that out? Well, when it didn't have a spike on, it was easy. That's the little Zygonissa, I think that is. Zygonissia. Murasaki Kamado, dark blue. Pushed up a new growth, maturing, started another one. Needs a repot. It's on the list. Now, these other little seedlings down here are the ones that are not in the direct line of sight, and I'm not actually going to water them this time. They would naturally be drier in winter, and they're not growing, they're not doing anything. They're in effect dormant on the grounds. There is no growth, nothing's happening. There's no point in keeping them wet. However, the ones under the lights were a different matter. I'm trying to get them to grow. Right. How do we get this out? What we do is we grab hold of the pot, tip it, and gently ease the spike down through the gap. And yes, that is fiddly. But the blooms won't be there forever, so it's only fiddly for a while. And if you thought getting it out was fiddly, putting it back in is even more difficult, I'll call it. And this is bone dry. This got missed out on the last run. So it needs a soak this time. Desperately in need of a repot. Soon. Not now. Oh, fragrance. Gorgeous. Right. And at the point that gets repotted, it will also get split. This section and this section. The bit in the middle is old, tired, and of no use anymore, so we'll be splitting that one. So we'll have two. You know me, I don't usually keep duplicates. Same with this one, this has to be eased down. This has got two nice buds swelling up now. That was the Louisendorf. This is Zygo, no ID Zygo, this one. Again, dry. Got missed out last time because it was still damp. This has got two growths on it, one of which has spiked and one of which hasn't. And this is another Zygo that's getting a fair bit of old tired stuff behind it. You know, leafless bulbs. So it's on the list to be dealt with. And the other one just will not grow very well. It might be that the pot's too big. It has produced a new growth. Its previous new growth just miserably failed. It didn't mature, it didn't form a bulb, and it only produced one leaf, albeit a good leaf. But this growth looks a bit more normal. So, but it's got an incredibly poor root system, and the pot's a bit big. So all I do is water around the base of the plant. I don't get the whole plant soaking wet. I think this missed out two runs where it was it just stays wet because it's not growing much and it hasn't got much of a root system. Chuck that there for now. One more, and that's this bulbo that lives on the floor, which is Delatescens. It has a nice new growth, which hasn't produced any roots yet, but they will come soon. Not a happy plant, but still alive. And this does not use its water up very quickly. This missed two runs, so it's now dry, so it can have some water. But it's not growing much. That new growth is taking its energy from the older parts of the plant because it hasn't got its own little root system yet. But at least it's growing. Okay, that's me at my work. I'm not filming watering the mounts. I've filmed watering the mounts before. Maybe another time in the not too distant future we could have a similar session doing the mounts. But this is going to be heavily edited because I think I've got about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 worth of video there, which is too much. I'll split it into two, and this will be the end of the second part. And I'll see you next time. Hope you've enjoyed that.